How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the SITREP. I am Marine Corps veteran Paul Corbett, and today we're talking about, a lot of stuff, but we're primarily focused on MEB, Medical Evaluation Boards, and some other different boards you may be involved with as you're exiting from the military or dealing with as you're trying to interact with the VA. And today we have an expert, subject matter expert, joining us who traveled over 150 miles to be here. Steve Plum, thank you so much.
Hey, Paul, it's a pleasure, man. It's always a pleasure.
Well, I really, really appreciate you coming in. I mean, this is a big topic. It's the time of year that a bulk of individuals who served are getting out of the military. So this is a big key topic that I think a lot of people need to know about.
Sure.
Real quick, you're working with veterans who are transitioning from the military.
Yeah, I'm currently in this position. I am the military to VA program manager. We provide case management services to all post 9/11 veterans coming off active duty into VA healthcare. We coordinate all their care, help make sure their benefits are intact, and get them set up for success post-service.
So let's jump into it, shall we?
Sure.
What is a medical evaluation board?
The medical evaluation board is a DOD's equivalent to a workman's compensation board, so to speak. If somebody gets injured in military service or develops an illness in military service that precludes them from doing their job and it becomes an unfitting condition, the medical evaluation board is there to measure the amount of functional loss of that organ or that system for compensation purposes. So it's much like you're a UPS driver, you fall off the back of the truck, you break your leg. You gotta go to the hospital, you gotta treat, and then you gotta be cleared to come back to work. And the doc says, oh no, you got a malunion in the brake. We're going to need to re-brake it, and you can't go back to work for another period of time. And then finally, in the end, because you're not able to go back to your job, they measure the amount of functional loss and then give you a big payout. Very similar with the military. The medical evaluation board is set up it's basically a commander's tool to conserve his fighting strength. To take people that can't do their job and place them into a medical hold or a medical management center or a soldier recovery unit that will then allow the commander to backfill that position.
Okay. So there's actually a lot of different boards that exist around this topic.
Right.
And they're not all similar.
No, they're not.
So, I mean, based from this, what is the difference between a medical review board and a medical evaluation board?
A medical review board is a board that's set up by your respective component that will determine whether or not you meet the criteria to be referred to the medical evaluation board. Medical evaluation board is a group of people at the PEB, physical evaluation board, that determine whether or not you are truly unfit for your job and whether or not you should be either reclassed into another job or separated from service. Now, if you can be reclassed, they'll simply reclass you into another job, into another MOS. But 9 times out of 10, when a person develops an unfitting condition, they can't do their common tasks. Like everybody in the Army is supposed to be able to be an infantry person, serve infantry roles. Like everybody in the Marine Corps is supposed to be, a rifleman or infantry as well. So we all have those common tasks. But if we can't do those common tasks, then the physical evaluation board says, no, you can't do it. And then they push you out. Okay. So what I mean by push you out, they push you through. This is complicated stuff, man. This is really complicated stuff. And I got to kind of backtrack a little bit here. So there's 2 types of systems that the military is using right now. They use the legacy system, which is where the military does all of the evaluations and the ratings themselves. And then there's the IDES, Integrated Disability Evaluation Service, which started in 2009, around May 5th, 2009, at Fort Drum, which is when I was there. And basically, the bottom line was that there was an issue between the Army and the VA, and there was some miscommunication, and it resulted in developing this wonderful IDES process. And this IDES process is integrated. So the Army says, okay, you're unfit. They order examinations through the VA. The person goes out to the VA. They get all their examinations done. And then that results in compiling a packet of evidence that then goes into a narrative summary that then is used to be pushed to the PEB for determination. Once they determine, yes, you're unfit, then they push all of your stuff out to a VA regional office somewhere in the country, and they do all the ratings. When those ratings are done, they come back to the PEB at Walter Reed, Bethesda, and they say, okay, we're going to issue you, the Army, it's a 199. It's a certificate that says, hey, you have to be medically separated. It'll state whether it's combat related, non-combat related, whether it existed prior to service, whether it was incurred in service, whether it was aggravated by service. So there's a lot of, it's very complicated. Each one of these topics could be a whole series.
Yeah. I'm sure that, we get tons of stuff. Most of our audience knows. Anybody that's new to us, you can send us ideas or questions that you'd like for us to cover on the show. You can email us at thesitrep@va.gov. It is on the screen right now below. But as we're moving forward, you mentioned VA. So what is the difference between the evaluation process between VA and the PEB?
The PEB is only looking to determine whether or not a person is actually unfit or can be reclassed. If once a person is unfit, they issue a memo saying, an unfit memo, and then they push everything from the PEB out into the VA regional office. So the VA regional office does all the ratings. When those ratings are done, so let's back up. So once you've been pushed to the MEB, what happens after you get pushed to an MEB? You get set up with a physical evaluation branch liaison office somewhere in the continental United States. Things are pretty much handled on a queue. Some of the people in our region go to West Point, some go to Atterbury, some go to Fort Drum, some may go to Fort Gordon, so on and so forth. So once a packet gets sent off to the physical evaluation board, the physical evaluation board reaches out to, or the PEBLO rather, reaches out to the military services coordinator who works for the VA. And that VA representative sits down with the service member and says, okay, well, what do you have in your medical records that you could file claims for? Sometimes they get all the stuff in the claim, sometimes they don't. Sometimes people are unsure of what they can claim. And that's a problem because, it means that when they're finally out the door, then they've got more stuff, or they realize, oh, wow, I should have claimed that. And then, they want to start the process to get that in the packet, but it doesn't work that way. So once the military services coordinator gets the claim gets forwarded, and then the VA orders examinations. Right now with this pandemic, they're utilizing QTC, VES, LHI. They're using contract companies to do the exams. Before the pandemic, they were going to the VA for comp and pen exams, right? Those comp and pen exams, the same kind of comp and pen exam you and I would have is the same kind of comp and pen exam they would have.
Okay.
So the military, when they're doing the medical evaluation board, they're only looking for those unfit conditions. Let's say, you got a gunshot wound, or you had a traumatic amputation, or you have PTSD or a traumatic brain injury, or let's say you developed, major depressive disorder or something on active service, right? That's pretty much why they're going to medically board you, is because of that unfit condition. But people have other things that have gone on that, like they might have sleep apnea, or they might have, an ankle strain or a shoulder strain or a back strain, or something that's not going to potentially be career ending, that's not going to rise to the level to be medically, evaluated for. But the VA will still do all those exams, right? Once all those exams are done, those exams then get pushed back to the physical evaluation branch liaison office, and there's a doctor there that compiles all the evidence that writes up the narrative summary. So on the narrative summary, there's going to be above the line and below the line. Above the line are your unfitting conditions. That's all the DOD is interested in medically evaluating you for. All the stuff below it is stuff that the VA is going to rate you for anyway. So what happens is, once that's all done, they get sent back to the service member for signature. Once the service member signs off on it and agrees to it, it then goes to the PEB at Walter Reed, and they determine whether or not the person is unfit or can be reclassed. If the person's unfit, then they send everything out to a regional office. So the VA will then rate everything that's on that narrative summary, all the unfitting conditions and all the fitting conditions. And what they'll do is they'll rate everything and then send the ratings. And then of course, in the VA, everything is combined, right? So you don't get like 300%, because everything is combined. So 50 and 50 actually equals 75, which rounds to 80.
Yep.
So VA math. So what happens? It comes back to the PEB. The PEB separates out the unfitting conditions from the fitting conditions, right? And that creates two separate sets of ratings. So you've got a VA overall combined rating, and then you have a combined rating on the DOD. So let's say you got 250s on the DOD side, that would still round to 80. So the VA would then say, the DOD would then say, okay, here's your disability evaluation for 90% or for 80%.
Yep.
Right. And then they, because, well, in the grand scheme of things, if you get a 10 or 20% rating, you don't have enough to be medically retired in Chapter 61 medical retirement. If you get a 30% or better, you're going to be medically retired. And along with that medical retirement comes a certain pot of money. It's like 2.5% times the number of years of service times your base pay. And that equals a pot of money. Out of that pot of money, the most you can get out of that pot of money is 75%. The least you can get out of that pot of money is 50%. So even if you got a 30% rating from the DOD, but you had a combined 100% rating from the VA, you're only going to get 50% of that pot of 2.5%. And then that's not going to be a lot of money, if you're a private first class, or if you're a specialist, or if you're a sergeant with less than 6 years or less than 5 years, you're not going to get a lot of money. So then what happens is it becomes the higher of the two evaluations. Are you going to get more money from the DOD, or are you going to get more money from the VA? You're going to end up getting more money from the VA, so you get your VA benefits. You don't get your DOD pay, but you do get TRICARE, you do get your ID card, and you get all the rights and privileges of somebody who's got a 20-year retirement.
So I'm always throwing out questions out on the net, whether it's on Facebook or what have you.
Yeah.
And one of the questions that I ended up getting from Ali Rodriguez, actually an excellent veteran service officer, that she hears all the time from veterans in her community. What is the difference between medical separation and medical retirement?
So medical separation. So, the DOD could separate you for a number of reasons, right? And I mean, they could separate you. They could do. The Army uses Chapter 5-17, which is another catch-all area to chapter somebody that doesn't, that's got some other form of medical issue that is precluding them from doing their job. But when you get pushed to an MEB, if you get a 10% rating or a 20% rating, and you don't get enough, you don't get that 30%, then you don't hit the Chapter 61 medical retirement. Then you get medically separated. With that medical separation will come an enhanced disability payment. And if you're a non-combat person and don't have a combat-related injury,
that's what I wanted to ask you about next.
You got to pay that back. The VA says, "Hey, we want that money." And unfortunately, that can be, these guys can get a bucket load of money. It's not unheard of for someone to get, $30, $40, $60, $90,000, depending on the number of years of service.
That's insane. That's a lot of money.
But if it's combat related, then they don't have to pay it back. So let's say you have 17 to 18 years of service. You get 100% through this process from the VA. You get 10% from the DOD. But that 10%, is combat related. You're not going to pay that back. You don't have to pay that back. So that's like free money. But if it's not combat related, then, it's going to come out of your monthly benefit amount at the rate of 10%. And it's like a loan then,
Right.
So for some of these guys, the idea is, most of us wanted to hit 20 years of service, right? And get that 20-year retirement, that statutory retirement. And I talk to people every day. I talk to, people that are getting ready to retire with their 20 years. And I'm like, dude, you need to do a medical board. Why would I want to do a medical board? Well, you got a mandatory 5-year period of recall where they can recall you to active duty. And if the balloon goes up, and we're living in a precarious world today, if that balloon goes up, they're going to call you back to duty. And if you have, if you're 100% disabled, man, and they call you back to duty, they're going to send you to a MOB site and they're going to stop you cold in your tracks. And then you're going to have all that time and effort spent away from your family just to be returned to your family. So, people that are getting ready to retire benefit from the medical review board as well, medical evaluation board, because then that could code their DD214 so that they can't be recalled. And it's the same thing like you or I. If we were just first termers and we just did 4 years of active duty, then we've got 4 years of inactive ready reserve, right? And we have to muster. And they can call us back to active duty at any time as well. But if you're getting out and you've got disabilities and the VA gives you a disability percentage and then they recall you and you go to a MOB site, then what? You're stuck. So, it behooves people if you're within a year of getting out and you've got a medical problem and you're just trying to hide and just like make it to your ETS date, don't do that. Don't do that. Because, if you just are trying to hide and you make it to your ETS date or your EAS date, then you're going to have to start all over. You're going to have to start all over with the VA. You're going to get out. You're going to come home. You're going to file your claims. Claims are going pretty quickly for first timers, Yeah. For the post 9/11. But, it's not unheard of for claims to take years. So the VA gave everybody that served in a combat theater enhanced enrollment eligibility, right? Priority group 5, to be able to, was it priority group 6, priority group 5?
5, yeah.
Yeah, to be able to give them 5 years of free health care for their presumed service-connected conditions that are in their service treatment record. Mm-hmm. And all that does is it allows, somebody who doesn't opt to do benefits delivery at discharge, which is a whole new subject, or a quick start claim, the opportunity to have 5 years of medical surveillance to develop their claim to be able to file their claims.
So I want to come back. I need to put a note in here to myself.
Yeah, I know, right?
To come back to the quick start and other stuff, because that's something new to me. I think a lot of this stuff has actually been developed since I've gotten out.
Oh, yeah. What year did you get out?
I got out in 2004. So I want to backtrack here for a second. And if MEB is an option mm-hmm. for anybody that is getting out of the military, EASing, ETSing, they call it in the Army, I guess.
Yeah.
How do they jumpstart that process? Is there a phone number they call?
No. There's the only way to jumpstart the progress or a process is to speak to your chain of command. If you have a condition that's unfitting, speak to your chain of command. If you know you're getting out, speak to your chain of command, because they're the ones that have the keys to initiate this process. Go to your platoon sergeant, go to your squad leader, get support. 9 times out of 10, they just you know how it is that when a person starts getting in trouble, sometimes it snowballs for them, and then they just get in big trouble and they get booted out, right? Sometimes, guys with post-traumatic stress disorder will come home and they'll try to self-medicate, right? And they'll drink or they'll do something else to self-medicate, and then they start getting into trouble. It's not the condition that causes the problem so much as it's the behavior that causes the problem. And yeah, the problem, could be mitigated a little bit, by the understanding that the person has a medical condition or a psychological condition. Mm-hmm. But let's face it, if you're drinking and driving and you get caught, they're going to make an example of you. Or if you're drugging, they're going to make an example of you. So what I tell people is, look, if you have support from your chain of command to get into the MEB process, then you need to soldier on. You need to man up, or woman up, so to speak, and go to all your mutas, go to your annual training, go to your mutas, or continue to go to work and do your thing. Don't get in trouble, because if you get in trouble, then they can impose an administrative action on you instead of the MEB, right? And then what happens then is the administrative action goes and the MEB goes. So you go through the whole MEB process and you get up to that very end where the commanding general says, no, we're making an example. And then all of that stops. It all stops. And that can be a terrible thing for somebody that, you know, could potentially be 100% permanently and totally rated walking out the door.
Right.
And then they've got to come out the door, find somebody like their program manager or a veteran service officer that can help reinitiate that claim process.
Well, you can be dealing with character discharge issues too.
Oh my God.
All sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah.
It could be a big can of worms.
Big. And then of course, how a person comes home, you know, makes all the difference in the world. How you get out of the military and how you come home makes all the difference in the world, man. It really, truly does. If you come home with your head held high, you know, all your benefits intact, not having to worry about filing a claim or, you know, getting this added to your claim, and you come home with the idea that you're going to go back to school or you're going to do a trade school or you're going to go back to work, you know, it just helps that much to be able to help you with your readjustment to civilian life.
So I want to ask, because there are a ton of men and women out there that have served in the National Guard and Reserves, who have deployed, who have injuries and illnesses and everything else from their time in service. Thank you, all of you, by the way. Is the MEB process any different for them as it is with active duty? No,
not really. Not really at all, no. Because their case is going to actually be sent to an active duty installation. Oh, well, I mean, there may be a Reserve Center or National Guard Center somewhere. I don't know all of the places that are doing this, but typically they go to an active duty installation. Like in our area, goes to West Point. Like I think that the guy that one of the other outreach folks and I know is actually being med boarded through, I believe, through West Point.
Okay.
And so I do want to say, I want to kind of jump subject for a second,
okay,
that there are people that are out there that can help you. If you have a medical condition and your chain of command is taking advantage of you and violating your profile and doing things, because you got to have a profile, right? You got to have a permanent profile. If you get a temporary profile for an issue, I mean, that temporary profile is there to say, hey, temporarily, we're going to take you, we're going to put you on light duty. We're going to, you know, make sure that you don't have to do your physical training, or maybe we're going to do alternate physical training. So that temporary profile, you know, that's not going to last. But if you have a permanent profile, chances are you're going to get caught, and they're going to send you to a medical review board. And if you go to a medical review board and you've got chain of command support, then they'll push you to an MEB. If you don't have chain of command support, you know, it's going to be a very difficult road. However, there are people out there that can help you. There's ombudsmen, medical ombudsmen that work for MedCom out of Fort Sam Houston. There's two of them, John Fish and John Maniscalco. They both sit in the ombudsman's office at Fort Drum. They cover this whole region. And then you've got AW2, Army Wounded Warrior Program. For the Marines, you've got the Wounded Warrior Regiment. For the Navy, you've got Wounded Warrior or Navy Safe Harbor. For the Air Force, it's Wounded Warrior. And they're advocates that will help you, you know, help determine whether or not you're going to get combat-related special compensation, because that's another whole benefit.
Mike and I have actually talked about that before.
Yeah. As opposed to CRDP if you're getting ready to retire. But the ombudsman, you know, they can go right to the chain of command. They can advocate for you with your chain of command. Also, there's MEB Outreach Council, and their job is really to help keep the specific department from, you know, injuring a soldier, not injuring, maybe, you know, harming a soldier in some way. They advocate wholeheartedly for the service member, and will, you know, when you do your MEB, if there's a condition that doesn't really, you know, the medical people are saying that it's not really fitting, or it's not really unfitting, but it really is unfitting because you can't do your job because of it.
Right.
You know, then these guys can help you draft an independent medical review to help you go out to a third separate party to get an independent medical review. There's also things, I know I'm just kind of rambling here, it seems, but this is just such a complicated process, man.
It is very complicated.
There's a thing called diagnostic variance. Okay, diagnostic variance is where the DOD and the VA come up with two separate scenarios, right? So give you an idea. Take a guy who comes back from Afghanistan. He's got post-traumatic stress disorder. The VA says he has post-traumatic stress disorder. He might not have ever really treated for PTSD, but let's say the DOD says, no, he really has bipolar disorder. Well, that creates a diagnostic variance, right? So, they say PTSD, DOD says bipolar, and then they send him out for a third party evaluation that will, determine whether it's bipolar disorder or PTSD. So
it's crazy.
It is crazy. It's a complicated process. It's a legal process, right? It's very much like workman's comp, man. Very much. And, the whole time I was at Fort Drum, I'm like, hey, look, I'm here to get you pushed into VA healthcare. And, if you think you have extra claims, wait until this process is all over and done with. Don't try and initiate any claims. And I know that that's one of the questions that you submitted. If I'm in the disability MEB process, should I submit a VA claim for disability?
Yep.
No, don't. 9 times out of 10, if you're a reservist or a National Guardsman, you're going to have claims already out there, and those claims hopefully will have been either awarded, they'd have come to a decision, and you've gotten an award. And let's say you're already at 40%, but then you have this unfitting condition that they're going to want to medically board you for, and maybe you forgot to add a few things. Don't do anything. Don't do anything. Just let them med board you. Let that process work its way out before you start filing any claims. Because the bottom line is you're going to want to get that money in hand before you do anything else. It's always easy to reopen a claim, to resubmit new evidence for a claim. But while you're in the MEB process, leave it alone. Leave it alone. If you're active duty, leave it alone, because all you're going to do is slow down the process. And trust me, the whole entire time that you're in the MEB process, you're soldiering on, and you want to get out of there as quickly and as efficiently as possible with your benefits intact. You don't want to get in trouble. You don't want to do things that are going to slow the process down, because if the process gets slowed down and you start to develop some behavioral problems, well, they could administratively separate you, and
and then it's all for nothing.
Right.
Okay. That makes sense. So back to, you had mentioned there's a few other options, quick start being one of them.
Yeah.
What was the other option?
There's benefits delivery at discharge. And the way I understand benefits delivery at discharge is if you're 6 months out and you know that you're leaving 6 months, you can start filing your claims within 6 months. And ideally,
claims with the VA or
claims with the VA, okay, not with the DOD.
Not with DOD.
No, it's benefits delivery at discharge, and this is a very popular thing for retirees, right? Because they're going to retire and they're walking out the door, and there's not a lot of first termers, man, that just do 4 years and get out that are like, I think I'm going to file a BDD claim. People don't, and there's a lot of people that come in that don't get hurt. That are physically sound, just as physically sound as the day they came in as the day they get out. So, those people aren't going to want to file claims or not have any claims to file. But if there's somebody who knows, hey, look, I had a shoulder dislocation and I have a labral tear as a result of it. And, I had to have reconstructive surgery on my shoulder and I don't have very much of a range of motion now because of it. Then, hey, guess what? File a BDD, because what will happen is once that BDD claim goes in, the VA will start working to set you up with exams before you leave active service. Now, right now we're in a pandemic, so I can't tell you how this has screwed things up for a lot of people. There are people that file BDD claims that don't get their exams until after they leave service. So, hopefully we're going to all get back to normal, at some point in time, and our processes will get back to normal and we'll work just as efficiently as possible. But for those guys, and gals, filing a claim within 180 days of separating from service is a good thing. The idea is you want to come home, have your benefits intact, or have your benefits intact shortly after you get home, so that money starts coming in. Because, if you don't have a job lined up or you didn't save a lot of money before getting out of service, you're going to need an income of sorts, You
need income, you need access to things. I mean, you walk out and, you no longer have health care. You have dental in certain situations for up to 180 days after getting out. Right. If that wasn't provided to you prior to you ETSing or EASing. But I mean, if you walk out of DOD with any type of rating, then boom, you now qualify for VA healthcare, and you now have free healthcare.
Yeah,
you know.
pretty much.
And then not to, if you got 10% disability, now you can look at education benefits beyond just the basic GI Bill,
Right.
There's just tons of stuff.
Now, there's one thing that's not on here that I think should be on here, and this is for just your M-Day National Guard or reservist. Somebody who just serves 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks a year, doesn't get called to active duty, doesn't have any active duty time except for active duty for training purposes only. Those people don't have 2 years of active and continuous service and are not eligible for VA healthcare, right? Unless they file a claim. Now, in order to file a claim, you really need an LOD, a line of duty investigation, right? So you get an LOD for something, and the issue is significant enough where you need to have healthcare. Hopefully there'll be what's called a Military Medical Service Office authorization for healthcare. It's a MIMSO authorization that allows TRICARE to actually send an authorization to the VA Medical Center for the VA Medical Center to do the treatment on that person. So now that person who's an M-Day or just a 2 weeks ADT, he gets hurt on the ADT or he gets hurt on the M-Day weekend, does the line of duty, gets treatment in the VA, and guess what? Now there's going to be a record in the VA, and when the guy gets off active duty or decides they want to file a claim, they can use that LOD then to file a claim. And, the VA will grant the claim because, they've got this line of duty that says it happened while in the line of duty.
Right.
But for active duty people, you don't need that. You're active duty 365 days a year, 24/7.
Right.
Yeah,
it's, I've run into that issue with a couple of people where, it says it right in the name. It's a service-connected claim for disability. You have to connect it to service somehow. If you're not able to establish that, then it's not that VBA doesn't want to approve it. You're just making it difficult for them to approve it.
Yeah, I think the VBA's motto is grant if you can, deny if you must. So I think they actually will work with you to try to grant your benefits.
Yeah.
That's been my experience, especially with these new young people coming out, they've been very, very responsive to a lot of the issues that my folks are having.
So, you said 1 year out, you can start the MEB process.
No, 180 days.
180 days?
Yeah,
I thought that was a
BDD. Out. No, that's a BDD. Quick start is 60 days. You can file a quick start claim so typically people go to TAPS. They have a transitional assistance program, right? When they're getting out. And it's around that time frame that they fill out 1010EZ that goes off to their respective VA medical center, and will be talked to about the BDD claims. So people, veteran service officers will come in and do their thing. There'll be people there helping the veterans or the service members trying to get jobs and stuff like that, right? So it's during that process that the BDD comes into play. If you don't get a chance to do a BDD claim within 180 days before leaving service, you can file a quick start. And a quick start, if you fill out the 526 disability evaluation form, or your service officer does it, they forward it off to your regional office, or they forward it off. I think they go to Salem. I may be mistaken, but I think they go to the Salem regional office. Or at least they were in the past going to Salem. And then the people would come home and they'd reach out to the gaining regional offices, get exams set up, and so on and so forth. So it's a process to jumpstart the claim, but it's not the benefits delivery at discharge.
Okay. And so with MEB, that process can be started 1 year in advance, right?
MEB can be done at any point in time.
Oh, any point.
Any point in time. I knew this kid that was driving off to basic training, and he had a car accident, and it was a significant car accident. It put a hole in his forehead, and he was leaking cerebral spinal fluid, water or the fluid from around his brain through his sinuses out his nose, and he had like multiple surgeries to get that fixed, and the DOD took responsibility for it, and they med boarded this kid.
Wow.
Yep. And he was on his way to basic training.
That's crazy.
Yep.
So he's under contract.
Yeah. So, you know, and we had this young service member that I'll never forget this guy. He was medically evaluated and he got a disability percentage, and he left the installation and drove off and had a bad car accident and lost his kidneys, and had to come back. They brought him back on active duty to stabilize him and put him on peritoneal dialysis because he didn't have kidneys. And then he, you know, once he was stabilized, he was put back out into the community. You know, when you're separating service, those 73 hours, man, that's key. You can't just, you know, expect that I'm going to separate service and I'm going to walk off the installation and I'm going to be fine. You know, you get into a car accident, you get a DUI, you break the law, they can pull you right back. They can pull you right back and do UCMJ on you. You're not a free person until after three days after you separate service. So, you know, what you do makes all the difference in the world.
Interesting. Is it really worth it to go through the MEB process? Say if I'm reaching the end of my 4 years.
Right.
Or 20 years. Mm-hmm. Is it really worth going through the MEB process as I'm getting out, rather than just waiting until I get out and then start with VA claims?
Yeah, it is worth it. I mean, because you could be recalled to active duty. Okay. If you're a 20-year retiree, you're going to have a 5-year period of mandatory recall where they can recall you back to active duty. I mean, we saw that happen with you know, post 9/11. A lot of retirees that got out before Afghanistan and Iraq were actually called back up. And you know, if you're medically boarded as you're walking out the door, your DD214 is going to be coded. They're not going to be able to call you back. And I don't know about you, but if I sail off into my civilian life and all of a sudden they call me back to active duty, and I've got all these disabilities that, you know, that I've been going to the VA and fighting with to get, you know, service connected for, and, you know, they service connect me within 3 years of coming out, and on the 4th year the balloon goes up and we're being called back to active duty, we're going to be sent off to a mobilization site where they're going to say, don't go past go, don't collect $200. And then, you know, you're going to be kept there for a period of time for them to determine what to do with you. And it could disrupt your family life. It could disrupt you. If you have post-traumatic stress disorder, it could trigger a whole lot of crap, you know? So I think it's best to do that on your way out the door. If you have, look, I'm not talking about, you know, the run of the mill, you know, a knee strain or ankle strain or, you know, shin splint. Or, I'm not talking about the mild injuries. I'm talking about the significant stuff. You know, let's say you have L3, L4 spinal compression, and you have nerve root damage, and, you know, you've got radiculopathy in your legs, or you've got a cervical spinal issue and it causes radiculopathy in your arms, and you lose the strength in your hands. You're not going to be able to carry a weapon. You're not probably even going to be able to have a Kevlar to hold your head up high, right? There's a lot of people that get spinal fusion, you know. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. If you know this has happened to you and you can opt for a medical board, do it, because, you know, the sooner you get that code on your DD214, the less inconvenience it's going to be for you or your family. You know, if you've deployed 4 or 5 times and you're finally getting the chance to retire, do it, because the last thing your family is going to want is for you to be deployed again and have all that time away. You know, it's you got to start getting into the mindset of taking care of your family, taking care of yourself, and taking care of your family. And, you know, that's really what it's all about once you've done your 20. I mean, you've done your 20, your spouse has done it with you and she supported you, or you've supported her. You know, move on with life. You know, some people aren't going to want to move on. Some people want to go back, but some people want to go back that should not go back. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I think we owe it to our families to make sure that we're gonna keep things smooth and safe for everybody, right?
Yeah. Well, Steve, I truly appreciate you coming on to the SITREP, discussing this. I am sure there's a bunch of people out there that are like, oh, I've got so many questions right now. Like I said before, you can email us at thesitrep@va.gov. Email address is on the screen. There's a lot of different things that Steve covered. Ombudsmans that you can get in touch with, organizations, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can give them. I can give them the phone number.
We'll put all that information in the video description below to make sure that it's available to all you men and women out there. But again, Steve, I appreciate you driving down here and covering all this. It's
my pleasure. You know, I like to do outreach with you guys, and you know, this pandemic has crimped our style, man, big time. Yeah. So you know, it's great. It's great to get out and do something different.
Well, thank you again, and to all you men and women out there who are currently serving or have served, thank you very much for your service.
You have questions? We have answers. The SITREP is your trusted source for veterans benefits information with expert analysis and interviews with leaders from the field. To find past shows, podcasts, and other content, search #TheSITREP on YouTube.